You know how when you go to the supermarket, they call it a store, right? You know, I'm finna go to the store. You see what I'm saying? Well, they don't call it a store for no reason. They call it a store because it's like a warehouse that people can come buy stuff in where they store stuff at, okay? But it's an open warehouse where you can walk in and buy stuff that they got stored in there. So that's why they call it a store, because they store stuff in there. And you store stuff in a space, right? You store stuff in a space. So when you go to the store, you see that the store only have so much space to store the stuff in, right? Okay. So that's the same thing with your mind. Your mind is an infinite space where you can store many stories or much information or much knowledge in. So when they're telling you these stories, hitting you with these stories, they are trying to store this information, this type of energy in a certain space and location in you. See, because you got different space, you can be in a different space. Like, you know, a psychopath, he's in a different space than me, spiritually. You see what I'm saying? A Muslim is in a different space than me, spiritually. A Christian is in a different space than me, spiritually. You see, because of the stories that they are reading. The stories put them in a certain kind of space, you know, in a certain kind of spirit. So like I said, your mind is infinite space. So they know that it's recording everything. So they're trying to store all kind of stuff on your mind as soon as they can. You see what I'm saying? Because they want to take over your space. Like I said, you mean your own universe. That's your own universe. Shouldn't nobody be taking over that space, storing anything in it that's false. Now, what's false? I personally believe most religions were made to keep a lot of people dumb and the ones that understand it smart and in control. You know, whoever wrote those books, it kept them in control. You see what I'm saying? So whenever you guys are letting these stories into your mind, you guys are actually letting whoever wrote that control you. First thing you need to remember is this. All religions, all stories that was created from these religions, all came from the universal laws. They wrote the stories from the universal laws, meaning the nature that's all around you. This is how they wrote the stories. The stories stem from them and are based on the universal laws of nature. Go look up any book, any rules, any sins, or anything that they're saying is wrong or right, or that you should do or shouldn't do, or this is the practice that you should do. All that has to do is with science. Okay? Universal laws, science is the center to all religions. So once you go do your real studies and get real deep in it, and what you're going to find out is mostly what you know of as God, image-wise, have been furnished for you from those that tell the stories. The story is to put the story on your spirit.
"17 years ago today, President George W. Bush was at the school for a reading event when his chief of staff, Andrew Card, whispered in his ear about the attacks. This is the first time President Bush was made aware. In the years since this moment, the president has talked about what he was thinking when he first got the news. He says he was thinking, quote, who the hell would do that to America? The president was later criticized by some for his initial reaction, basically not getting up out of that chair and running out of the room.
Try it again. Get ready for the beginning of that sentence. Get ready. She played with her doll in her house. Go on. She played with her doll in her yard. in our crisp voices. Let's go. Go on.
Thank you also very much for showing me your reading skills. I bet they practiced it, don't you?
Oh, yes. That's a requirement. Homework. Reading homework.
Reading more than they watch TV?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
If I do that, read more than you watch TV? Oh, that's great. Very good. Very important to practice. Very impressive. Read this book.
Because it was going to read it.
Here before me lies a baby killed by abortion in the second trimester of pregnancy. But today we are going to pray with this baby, and we are going to let this baby's body bear witness to our nation as we begin the process to elect our next president.
Catholic priest Father Frank Pavone is sparking controversy after live streaming a video on Facebook where he lays an aborted fetus on the altar in an appeal for voters to choose Trump.
Skills. I bet they practiced it, don't you?
Oh, yes. That's a requirement. Homework.
Catholic leaders in Texas released the names of almost 300 priests accused of sexual abuse, and they issued a new apology to victims. 14 Catholic dioceses in Texas yesterday publicly identified 286 priests and others accused of sexually abusing children over nearly 8 decades. Now, the announcement comes 10 weeks after CBS News first reported allegations against priests serving in the Galveston-Houston Archdiocese. A website that tracks clergy abuse in all 50 states lists more than 5,000, listen to that, 5,000 current or former priests who have been publicly accused. Nikki Batiste has been reporting extensively on the church sex abuse scandal.
Bible, Jesus Christ is followed by disciples who are married. Heck, the very first pope, St. Peter, was married. So why does the Catholic Church not allow priests to marry?
Excellent question.
Father John Paul Erickson explains.
First of all, strictly speaking, we don't have to be celibate. Here in this local church, we have several priests who are, in fact, married men. They are converts from Lutheranism. I'm not celibate only because I'm a priest. I'm a celibate also because I think the Lord himself has called me to that he's invited me to follow him in this radical way.
According to Catholic.org, the first written requirement for priests to remain celibate and without children is in Canon 33 of the Council of Elvira in 304 AD. Just 21 years later, Roman Emperor Constantine didn't like that blanket ban on marriage, so some priests did have wives and others didn't. That lasted a while, until the 11th century when Pope Gregory VII issued a decree for all priests to be celibate.
So what do you think about what the Pope said to the German newspaper?
Yeah, a couple of things. Number one, again, the Holy Father is acknowledging that different circumstances around the world require different responses. And the challenges that South America or Central America may face as a church are very different than the challenges that we face here in the United States. And not able to have the sacraments for literally years at a time because priests are not able to get there. In a situation like that, perhaps in fact, there may be a reason to examine opening up these sorts of questions.
Do you think the church will become perhaps more popular or more mainstreamed? Or at least head in that direction if that rule was to change?
I don't. I really don't. Look at other traditions that have married clergy, same problems. The problem is not celibacy. The problem is not the Catholic Church's understanding of sexuality. The problem is we live in an era where individuals, young people especially, don't want to commit. They don't want to have a commitment that is final and that is absolute. We see this also with declining marriage rates too. Same exact, I would say, foundational problem.
So it's not a sexual issue, it's a committal issue.
I really believe that's the case. I really believe that is the case. But the sign value, the meaning of it is profoundly important. And it's a great gift for me personally. Is it an easy thing? Well, no. But quite frankly, being a married man is not easy either. Being a father is not easy either.
No kidding, Father.
Exactly. Drop the mic.
Well, yeah. It was really cool. Yeah, he was great. Another point that the father made, though, is that maybe there are too many parishes around the world. Not that there's too many Catholics, but there's too many parishes. And they should maybe concentrate some of those parishes so that the smaller amount of priests that are around could be spread out and fill those so the sacrament can be given. It's an interesting thing. Another thing he told me is that, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, I was reading, isn't the point of this because there is a shortage of priests in Brazil? I was reading there's one priest presiding over 10,000 parishioners.
Yeah, so that's what he was saying, is that in maybe certain regions of the world, it's a different problem than, say, here in the United States.
Okay.
So perhaps allowing that there might be one thing. Another thing he said is that priests who are married already and then become ordained in other orthodoxies, then they have to be celibate afterward. You can't have sex, even though you're married. Interesting, right? I know, right?
My dad's a pastor.
Even moving. Pedophilia in ancient Greece, right? The most common form of same-sex relationships between males in Greece was pedastry, meaning boy love. It was a relationship between an older male and an adolescent youth. A boy was considered a boy until he was able to grow a full beard. In Athens, the older man was called the Erastus. He was to educate, protect, love, and provide as a role model for his Erasmus, all right, whose reward for him lay in his beauty, youth, and promise, okay? The ancient Greeks, in the context of pedastry, city-states, were the first to describe, study, systematize, and establish pedastry as a social and educational institution. They instituted fucking pedophilia. Do you understand what the fuck that means? Let me keep it moving. It was an important element in civil life, the military, philosophy, and the arts. So that means in civil life, aka everyday life, in the military, in their philosophies, teachings, and their arts, pedophilia, okay, was an important element, which means anywhere you went inside of Greek culture, pedophilia was the leading ideology.